Welcome to episode 2 of The Coin Flip. This is a Gwent-themed debate show, and my name is Flake. I'll be your host. The premise is fairly simple. Two prominent Gwent personalities are going to pretty much be discussing three important topics. They're going to debate each side of the coin, each getting about a minute to present their case. Once that wisdom has been dropped, the gloves come off. Now let's meet our gladiators, and the term is pretty much fitting for our first guest. That would be the leader of the Legion, and when he's not letting his Gwent play speak for itself, he is soothing you with his sweet sax sounds. He is Markthius. And debating the other side of the coin, Markthius' opponent is someone that you know fairly well. You've seen him around. He is definitely a big player on the Gwent scene. He is Truedawn. So with that aside and the rope burning low, let's get started. All right, gentlemen, welcome to the show, TD and Markthius. I assume that you are well familiar with the rules.
Yes.
Indeed.
Okay, that is some solid confidence there. So what we'll do first is, before we flip the coin and get going, I want to say, Markthius, do you have anything that you want to say to your opponent before we begin the festivities?
I guess a good luck, have fun.
That is no fun at all.
We'll see how that goes.
That is not at all fun. Truedawn, do you have anything that you want to go and say to your opponent, my friend?
You have a really cool raid notification on your stream.
Thank you. Wow, a compliment. All right.
Okay, so this is definitely all right. We're setting the bar real high for animosity here. By the end of it, we might actually be holding hands. This is gonna be great. So we're gonna flip the coin, and Truedawn, as the elder statesman, you're gonna get to call it. So we've got I have a 50-cent piece. That is heads. That is tails. So if you want to call it, we'll flip it, and then we'll go from there.
Tails.
All right, tails. It is, in fact, tails. So would you like to defend or debunk the first statement, my friend?
Defend. Yeah, I'll defend.
Okay, so the first topic that we're going to be discussing is high-tempo Gwent decks are the only way to excel in competitive level Gwent. So, Truedawn, you got 60 seconds, my friend. Make your case.
Okay, so the way Gwent works on a fundamental level, you just have to make better raw point plays than the other person. There just aren't things that care about being in play that generate points over time, really. So you are just incentivized to just have massive plays like Ithlin and Siri Nova and all of this stuff that just has an immediate impact, because there really isn't a payoff for like putting one thing in play and then you play something else to synergize with it and then you like get more points. Stuff like that, like Great Sword, Longship, are just like bad. And like maybe they could be good at some point, but it would require a complete overhaul of like the entirety of the rest of the game in order for that to be the case. I think they should probably do that. But as it stands right now, it's just like there's not enough payoff for the synergies, and all of like the raw point, just like immediate impact cards are too good.
All right, sounds good. Markthius, other side, my friend.
Am I defending this? I can't remember what
you are debunking the statement. You do not like this statement. You're here to argue.
I do not like it.
Yeah. So whether you agree with it or not, that I do not care, my friend. That is not for you to decide.
Right. Sure.
So you tell me why. Will you tell me why high tempo decks are not the only way to excel at high level Gwent?
Sure. I think Gwent. What sets it apart from other card games is its diversity in cards, right? So while you can play high-tempo decks and high-tempo cards constantly, which will obviously give you an advantage, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to get the best of the board. You could play a lot of, with all the RNG elements being added in, you could play a lot of randomness that could get you the win. So you don't necessarily need to play all this high-tempo. Some of the cards that Truedawn mentioned are maybe some high-tempo cards. However, if I throw some randomness in there, well, I've just thrown your whole game out of whack, didn't I? So I think the RNG element plays a good part to kind of say that, well, you don't really need to have high tempo to necessarily win the game.
So Truedawn, you're saying that, I mean, there's not enough that on the other side of the board to really affect your outcome, your win condition. So a lot of your win condition is coming from your own side of the board, and in that case, it's point value, like from a raw perspective, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for everything to be designed like Greatsword, Longship, where like you need to get multiple things in play to achieve max value, and there's like there's synergies that create value over time that your opponent can interact with, and all that stuff. But unfortunately, that is the only deck that functions that way. Every other deck just has all of its stuff come into play, do its thing, and that's it. Like there's no synergies need to cobble together. There's like no build up. There's no tension. It's just I'm gonna play Ithlin, or I'm gonna play Yorvith Meditation. Like all of these cards are worth like 30, and there's like nothing you can do about it. There's just not a great deal of interplay involved. It's kind of the main problem with like the current state of Gwent, because they have not allowed themselves that room to create tension, to create synergies, to have things on the board matter. And I would like for them to try and get to that point, but as it stands right now, it's just not the case.
Well, makes sense. I just like the fact that both of those big offending cards are both Scoia'tael legendaries.
Yeah, there's some oopsies over there in the green color. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Green making us green. Now, yeah. Markthius, I mean, yes. One thing that I want to ask about what you said is that you're saying that randomness can get you the win, and that high tempo play is not the only path to victory. But what aspect of randomness are you essentially talking about? Because isn't just generating something random for a bomb tempo play? That's what you're kind of getting at. There's nothing that's just like a one-off, isn't it?
Sure. So Truedawn's talking about pure massive power on your board. Just I play my biggest guys, throw them on the board. That's high tempo. You can't catch up to me. But cards like Usurper, one of the new leaders, who can create a random gold for me. Might give me a gold leader that will help me out. It might give me what's the new Scoia'tael leader that could get me a spell that could help me out.
Pretty boy.
Things like that. So the random, especially with the stones as well, the new stones could end up giving me a card that I need to have a big tempo shift, to have a swing. So while you could just throw all your guys on the board, have no interaction, just go balls to the walls and say, here's all my points and good luck. I think the RNG adds an element of we could slow this down a little bit, and maybe I'm going to throw your game off by maybe I get a good card out of this.
I do feel bad for you a little bit, Markthius, because you did kind of get this to debunk this statement in a meta that is essentially infested with high value dwarves. Yeah. So I do definitely sympathize with your point of your point of attack here, because you're really coming to the battlefield with a little bit less ammo than Truedawn does, because he's literally just saying, look what's going on. Like look at the meta right now.
He's defending a statement that he knows is true.
I know.
Yeah. And so coin flip OP in this show and in the game.
Exactly, which is hilarious. Because I will let the viewers know and those listening that they do that Markthius and Truedawn they were aware about maybe 24 hours ago, especially this is the case especially for Truedawn, who's an awesome fill-in right here and an awesome guest, is that he found out about these topics probably about 8 hours ago, so his preparation was a little bit short-lived versus Markthius, let's say. But Markthius just got hosed on the fact that he lost coin flip. So coin flip itself, maybe that's a topic we can discuss down the road. So any parting shots, guys, on this topic? Because I mean, I don't want to crown a winner, but it was just such a difficult uphill battle for you, Markthius, on this one.
It's just like there's no incentive for doing things that like accrue value later, like Stefan Skellen or like the buff Francesca gives on Tutor. Like all these things that are like cool effects that set things up, that can do things later. They pale in comparison to just like raw points, because there's really no incentive to like cobble together synergies or like assemble A plus B. So all of these things that like set up your hand for the next round or like put points in the next round, just like losing the initial impact is so bad, because there's like, it's so easy to punish falling behind, and there is no way to come back from being behind. So it's just like the way the game is currently structured is just like,
no, it makes sense. That makes sense. So I guess a lot of this just comes down to fix a few things.
Yeah.
few, maybe. Just a few.
Just a few. Again, well, rip Markthius on this one, man. There are no points awarded or anything like that, so don't even worry about it. There will always come back for another round, which we will get to right after this. Hey everybody, do you want to be on an episode of the Coin Flip? Do you want your name to be there or maybe there? Hit me up and tell me why you'd make a great contestant here on the Coin Flip. So after round 1 has wrapped up, we're going to go straight to round 2, and it's a decent lead-in and a great segue for the discussion that we just actually had, the debate that raged on. RNG effects, which Markthius said, you know what, that has a lot of prominence. There you go, some redemption. Great segue. If anything, Markthius, you might have lost that round, but at least you won the segue battle. And that's not a race on like a scooter or anything. So Markthius is going to be defending the following statement, and this might actually bite you in the ass again, but the statement is, create effects are good for the game of Gwent. Give us your piece, my friend.
Well, boy, I'm just getting shafted here in this game. Create mechanics are good for Gwent. The cards like the stones are a good example, because those are, I think, the most interesting create mechanics. I think are good for the game because it before those cards existed, there wasn't really a whole lot of RNG in Gwent. There was a little bit, but not really a lot. And when we're talking about RNG, I'm sure everybody knows what that means. It's a random effect, right? So I play the stone, I might get a random card. It creates a random card for me. Or Usurper will create a random another gold leader for me. The reason why I would say that this is good for Gwent is because it creates a nice element of surprise that otherwise didn't exist before. It breaks up the monotony of archetypes. So if I'm playing against a dwarf archetype, well, I pretty much know the cards you're going to be running in that deck. But if I throw some randomness in there as well, now I've just thrown off your game plan to figure out what I'm doing. So I think in that way, create cards do add an interesting element of surprise without it going too crazy of being too random. I think limiting the create cards to being you're going to make one of these 3 things is a good thing for Gwent.
That's fair. I like that statement. Truedawn, you're up, my man.
All right, I'm gonna be the boo RNG bad guy. All right, there's actually a lot to talk about with like create. So, create is obviously most comparable to discover and Hearthstone. It's a very similar mechanic. They both pull from 3 things outside the game. But one of the key differences between these 2 mechanics, and the reason I don't think create has really been net positive for Gwent, is that in Hearthstone, most of the things that discover cards put the card into your hand, because that's how that game works. You can like play stuff later. So you can look at some cards, see something, be like, okay, I think I can leverage this, take it, and then sculpt the game in such a way from that point to leverage that card. That's not how creating Gwent works. You immediately play the cards you take. So in most cases, you're just like looking at the cards and be like, oh, this is 7, this is 8. Okay, I'll take the 8. Sure. Again, because we talked about before, there's not really any payoff for cobbling together synergies. You're just like taking the highest raw point thing you got from the create pool. So in that respect, it's adding the illusion of variance. Like you're getting points with different cards, but it's like the same play patterns. So I agree that Gwent needs to be more varied and you need to have a more dynamic experience, and that random mechanics are a way to achieve that. I think the specific implementation of create has not really worked out well because it doesn't alter play patterns because things come into play immediately.
Okay, so you're saying that the fact that they just hit the board and have immediate impact, and it comes down again to almost like a numbers game, the random elements to it, it's not owing to what you said before, where there's no time to really cobble together a synergy, like you said.
Because of how little like unique effects matter, you're essentially making it so there's just like all of this stuff in the middle, and whichever one of those you get, it doesn't matter because they're all the same. Or you could low roll, in which case you're a huge dog to win from that point, or you high roll, in which case you're like very favored to win. So when everything's operating in the middle, like it should, it doesn't matter because they're all the same. And when you open up the pool to a wider array of options, you're just going to make it so sometimes people high roll or low roll, and it's like game deciding. So as long as we're just like playing raw points back and forth and the effects don't matter, create is bad.
Markthius, those be fighting words.
I get a rebuttal, right?
Oh yeah, man, you guys can go at it. Like, don't let
All right.
don't let me hold you back.
I'll give a good specific example of where create comes into play, because you brought up a good point there, saying that the create mechanics may not have good synergy because you're picking from a pool of create. But if you specifically don't go crazy with your create cards, I specifically have a dwarf deck. You may have heard of it. It's called Drunk Bohokies. You may have heard of the deck. Anyway,
yes, one of the rare synergistic Scoia'tael decks that still has some type of prominence anywhere, or that you see anywhere.
It's not the standard dwarf deck that most people are running, this casino dwarfs madness that everyone's all the craze these days. But I run one random card in that deck, and that's the Mahakam Horn. And the reason why I play that card is because, yes, it can boost something by 7, and I do play Marauders, that's a nice boost. But the reason why I run that card is because it will create a random dwarf card for me out of my 3 choices. Most of the time that I've played that card, I am happy with all 3 choices I've been given. Now, sometimes I will get 3 that I go, hey, it's not going to really work here. Sometimes I'll pull an extra Yarpin, which is really helpful, or pull another Agitator, which can make me another Marauder. So it's like, in that scenario, I'm only using one RNG element. So it could save me from a tight spot, and that's where I think create is actually really helpful. It can save you from a very tight spot if you use it correctly. If you use it, if you don't go crazy with it, and if you're using it to have synergy with your deck, which it can, then I think create's actually a good thing.
But at what point? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Truedawn.
I lost the thought. So
Markthius, you're mentioning that it's great in a limited standpoint, right? But at what point does that become a hindrance where, you're saying it could possibly be your get out of jail free card, but from a competitive perspective, and I hate to just kind of put everything into that kind of nucleus where everything that matters has to be from a competitive standpoint, because it's not necessarily true, because a very small portion of people play this competitively versus those who just go casual or just play ranked ladder. But when that card is played, and I played the H word for years, so to speak, and I, Hearthstone was a big part of my life for a while, and I kind of got a salty taste in my mouth after the fact where, it was only on my 1000th shredder dropping a Doomsayer that I was like, okay, I'm done with this, and that sort of meta was already washed away before it got replaced by more RNG. What worries me is that maybe this is something that it's good now to a relatively limited degree, and they have been tinkering with it, but it's too much not good.
Well, that's where we bring up an interesting point, because I specifically left Hearthstone probably the same reasons as everybody else, is the RNG got out of control. Most of the competitive players who've left as well, like people like, I don't know, I want to name drop, but you know who.
Which is the premier one.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Him and Super JJ as well also left because of that reason. And they just kept adding more and more RNG, and it just got to the point where every match was like, it doesn't really matter what I'm playing. I can throw Yogg at the end of the game and completely turn the whole game around. So I think right now Gwent's at a very interesting place where they threw a little bit more RNG than it already had, which was very minimal to begin with, and they threw a little bit more into the mix. And I think right now, I will say that if they put any more RNG into it, it's probably not a good idea. But I think right now the create cards bring an interesting element to the game. And let's also not forget that there is possibly a new game mode that the create cards could be for. So if that's the case, then I think create's actually really fun, because if there is going to be some of the new game modes that have been being whispered about, I think create plays a really fun element in the game together. I think that's one thing Hearthstone had going for it too, is when you played Arena and you had some RNG in there, it actually made it really helpful to have an RNG card of this random deck that you would be creating in Arena. So I think right now create's very good where it's at. I think it's right down the middle with create. Any more might be pushing it, but I think right now it's at a good spot.
There's like a Goldilocks zone of variance. Like RNG's on a diminishing return where a little bit of it adds variety to games, which is good because you don't want things to get stale. But the more you add, the more it erodes player agency, and then like things start to not matter and people stop playing your game. So, like obviously back when they got Silver Spies, before they just recently hotfixed it, that swung the pendulum very far away from removing player agency, because if you got a spy during a spy fight, you won the game. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, that's all like the axe mirrors were about. It's like the Heim hit their spy. Okay, the summoning circle, and like you just see who has more spies, and that was the whole game. So now that that's fixed, there are still some high rolls on some of the silvers, like Joachim out of the Nilfgaard runestone. I apologize for my dog.
It's all
the
good,
RNG
man.
right there. That was
Yeah,
That is
RNG.
a good. That is RNG being net bad, as you say.
Yeah. But yeah, I Joachim out of the Nilfgaard one. If you're playing Axeman and you get a second Duran or Sigdrifa or Restore off of the Skellige one, those are massive swings because of how important those cards are. And I think a lot of the problems that arise from Create arise from kind of just the overall design of the factions, where a lot of them just are centralized on a particular set of cards. And if you get a second one of those, it breaks the game. So as long as things are designed the way they are, Create getting secondary like Joachims or Restores or whatever is just going to give a massive advantage. And even in the cases, like I said before, where you like are kind of operating in the middle and you get like 3 bad options from like the runestones, you're just like counting the numbers. It's not really providing a new play experience. You're not doing some cool effect you wouldn't otherwise. Like in Hearthstone, sometimes you get like a weird card that you have to play differently with. In Gwent, that's not really the case. You get a different card you don't usually play with, but it doesn't play differently. You're not making decisions around it because like things in play don't matter. They don't really have effects. Like you're not getting like a Saskia Dragonfire or something. And even in that case, it doesn't really like play different. That's the main issue I've had with Gwent in recent history is they've eroded a lot of the things that cultivated interesting play patterns, and we are now left at a point where you're just like play a dwarf, buff a dwarf. So a lot of the problems with Create are more so problems with the overarching design of the game, but because of the state the game is in, it makes Create just not really function the way it could or should.
Is it a card limit issue though? Like, is it really the fact that, I mean, you can have 3 of any bronze you want, but the powerful aspect of silvers and how they can potentially really, I don't want to say break games, but give enormous swings, and the fact that you can have 2 at a time in certain cases could just really, I mean, the one thing that I thought of that could be close that was pre-Create is playing Eridan Frost, right? And you drop, let's say you drop an Iris, and then you play a Caretaker to drop another Iris. In some cases, that is a huge swing. That is playing 2 times the silver that you would otherwise never really have an option for. Same thing with Sigdrifa with Skellige and playing Grimace twice or something along those lines.
Well, like the difference is like those like Skellige that's or Sigdrifa, that's obviously the point of the card. Like the silvers and golds in Gwent are designed with the express purpose of being like one-shot effects. Like those are the really power effects you're only supposed to be able to use once. And we've seen in the past like Renew. I get Restore and Renew mixed up every time, but Renew on like Villain Trettenmirth and other cards like kind of breaks stuff in half. Like back when the Radovid control deck was good, when you could like play a control deck, you could immediately lead off with Villain Trettenmirth, play Thaler into it, and then they would have to get out of the round. They couldn't play anymore. And then you would bleed down to round 3 and then renew Villain Trettenmirth for your finisher. And that is obviously something that like you're not supposed to be able to do. And you could debate how problematic that is, but it sets up stuff in the future where if we're like recurring gold cards or recurring silver cards, stuff's going to break because is going to be a gold card or a silver card you're not supposed to play multiple times because of the design of the card. So Create also has this side effect of giving you secondary uses of effects you shouldn't have secondary uses of. The most egregious example of that was obviously spies, but there's like other things like Joachim Restore. Like Restore is absurd to get a second one. You kind of are like win on the spot if you get that. So as long as there's these really powerful silvers and discovers that can make secondary effects of them, you're going to have some problematic games.
Oh, well said. Well said, you're right. And Markthius, how do you feel about that one?
Well, he said about you mentioned renewing Usurper. Is that what you said? Would you say renewing it?
Oh, renewing
Villain Trettenmirth was
Bork,
the example I used, but like there's a bunch of stuff that becomes problematic with the card.
I've been a victim of that play before, you know, that kind of got swapped around and whatnot, but it is kind of impressive, and the fact that you're playing the same powerful card twice, it just sort of, you're circumventing the card limit, which was there for a reason. You don't want to have these kind of enormous play effects, like playing, you know, if it was up to me, I'd just play a swarm deck and pack 4, Yennifers in there and just go from there, right? Like that would, but I mean, right? Or I would just drop, a Triss Butterfly spell and just 5 times 4 and just win out of just passing and waiting, But I guess in that regard, I mean.
But you're calling Renew? We mentioned Renew. Are we calling Renew an RNG? Because it's not really at all.
No. But I mean, this goes back to the fact that these creator cards are kind of giving you a second life of a card that you otherwise wouldn't get. Much like dropping the double Iris on the board with.
Sure, but that was my point of getting you out of a tight spot. That's what can get you out of a tight spot. And they did correct one thing that I'm sure we were, even I was upset about it, the fact that the create cards would make a spy, which obviously is the most ridiculous thing. Because when you talk about the card advantage, like that was like pretty insane to be able to get massive card advantage because you have like 30 of the same spy cards sitting on your side of the board. But they've corrected that issue, thank God. And so now I think the create mechanic actually works a little bit more in your favor now. The one interesting create mechanic that I've run into is with the stone for the Nilfgaard faction, where it could create a she's not called fake Siri anymore. What's she called? The Empress, I think.
Empress.
Yeah, that I think is the most intriguing create mechanic, because when you see that played, or when you get that, that's a yes moment, because it's like, oh, I got him. He's not gonna expect this ever. Who runs this card anymore? So
it is definitely something to think about. Oh yeah, because not only that,
but think about the spot it could get you out of though. Like if I'm in a dry pass on round 2. I'm stuck with playing a card. I drop the stone. Well, let's see what I get, because I don't want to waste any card that's going to have synergy, or I'm not going to waste another card that I might need for round 3. I could just drop the stone and just let's see what it gives me, and it'll probably give me something good. If I get Siri, that's okay, cool. I drop it on my side of the board. It's just, it can get you out of those kind of situations, which I think are really helpful.
You think you're right on that case. I mean, in terms of RNG from a create aspect, it's not a surefire thing. It's not like, again, not to take it back to, okay, let's use Larry the Arcspores as your example in this case. It deals 4 damage to a random unit with its Death Wish. Now. Sometimes you roll the dice and you say, I need to get this particular unit off the board to break up this row, or to stop this effect or whatnot. And, that is definitely a random element to a guaranteed sort of outcome. When you're playing a runestone, you have no idea what you're getting and if there's any further RNG off of that further down the road. So I think that the power swing in these cases might actually just be kind of tuned out by the fact that rolling the dice, as you'll always get something good. But probably less than often, you'll get something enormously game-breaking. Now, don't get me wrong. It sucks when you get that card. Like you said, when the Empress comes out and it's dropped on you and you have no idea how to deal with it because you're not prepared for it. Let's be honest. People play one Thunderbolt or one Alzur's Thunder maybe off of a mage to get rid of it right away. But it's a pain in the ass. But
sure. But if you're the one playing it, hey, good for me.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay. So maybe we can agree that it puts more people into the game. It gives more people a chance to win. And I mean, like you led off with, Markthius, when you're saying that you play Hearthstone, you play 10 minutes of Hearthstone, all for it to come down to a flip of the coin with Yogg-Saron, which is a fantastic little plug for this show. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and call this one around. I liked it. You guys did awesome on this one. So we're gonna go to round 3 right after this. Do you have a topic that you want discussed on the coin flip? Send it my way and you might see it on a future episode. All right, we're back, and this is going to be round 3 of the coin flip. This one is going to be a little bit more lighthearted, a little less sort of poignant on the importance sort of element. So Truedawn, you're going to be the one defending this statement, and you have no idea what it is. Neither Markthius nor Truedawn know what statement 3 is, which makes it fun. And the statement is: scorching your own unit is the most embarrassing thing you can do in Gwent. Please tell me why.
I have to defend why it is.
Oh, yes.
The most embarrassing thing. I mean, it's like pretty embarrassing, mainly because you could just look at the board and
But we've all done it, have we not?
I've done it multiple times. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't change the fact that it's ridiculously embarrassing, because it just requires you to look at 2 numbers. and understand which one is bigger than the other.
Right.
It's
Basically,
very easy.
it's not even a math scenario. It's a greater than, less than scenario. But
Yeah.
I just want to ask you guys, when was the last time this has happened to you? Because I can honestly say that it was in this calendar year.
Oh yeah.
I think it's been a couple months, but I've done like other egregious things. I don't think I've scorched my unit in a while, but I've done other egregious stuff.
Oh man, scorch my unit.
I've passed well down twice in the past.
Oh, I've done that. Oh yeah, I've done that before.
All right, well, Markthius, so I guess that might be actually a nice little hint for you, man. What's worse than actually scorching your own unit?
Oh, there's so many things worse. I think you just mentioned it. Passing when you're on the second round. I've done that so many times, and especially when you're streaming and sometimes you're not 100% paying attention. You go, I want a card advantage for round 3. I'm going to go ahead and dry pass round 2. Oh, wait a minute. I'm the one that lost round 1. God. What? That's way more embarrassing than scorching your own unit. I can defend that scorching your own unit sometimes if you're playing if you're both playing a swarm scenario and you just didn't, there's like a guy in the corner, you just didn't see it. It happens all the time. Sometimes it happens. You just can't avoid it. But I think dry passing around that you are obviously not gonna that you're gonna lose the whole game because you didn't realize that you lost the first round. I think is way more embarrassing.
So that you know what? In all honesty, I mean, Truedawn's saying, you gotta just look at the board. But sometimes there's a 24 units on the board. You have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah,
whereas,
you don't know.
Yeah. Whereas on the other side, dry passing round 2 after you lost round 1. That just comes down to the fact that you just got to count crowns.
Right.
Yeah. I have none.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Yeah,
that means you haven't paid attention. I mean, I've even epidemicked my own units before, so you could. But
that one's a little less. Sometimes you see that one I find is a little less common, mainly because of the fact, or a little less. It's not as bad because you're looking at the board and sometimes all you see are just giant units and you don't see that 1 or on the board or that 2 and you're thinking like, wow, look at all those Arrakis that are on the board. I can't wait to just get it out of the way. And I'm gonna play my my Elven Mercenary to just get them all gone, epidemic them, and then all of a sudden you have no clue what the hell just happened. And then you get the pity pass on the other side. But I mean, both are pretty solidly awful things. And I mean, I could say that Truedawn gave you that one with the only thing worse is something I did last week, but that's okay. So
I got another one though too. I got another one that's probably also not, doesn't feel as good as if you're a one that likes to spam your character trash talking and all that, and then you're winning the whole game, and then by round 3 you end up losing. That's kind of a really embarrassing scenario. I don't like to do that to people, but man, that's got to be embarrassing to the other person that you just trash talk.
That's not so much embarrassing as justice. It's just
it's justice, but
justice is
especially
good,
if you think you're gonna win and you watch the other person scorch his own unit off the board after they've been trash talking you the whole time is the most justifying.
Yeah, they open up.
Well played.
So
sir.
I think the dream game for all of us right now is that you queue into an opponent as you're sort of you're sorting through your cards, you're figuring out what you want to mulligan, and all of a sudden they're hammering that spam of all the remotes. They end up scorching their own unit. They pass you in the round, then they dry pass on you, and you win in that form and fashion. I think that might actually be the A+ play for that.
Yep. The worst is the who told you to fight like this, and they just keep doing it. And oh my god! And then at the end, they scorch their own guy. Who told you to fight like this, huh?
I think the drunk guy was the freaking worst.
Oh yeah, he's annoying too.
After the Mock Ale Festival, I think there was this one story where I was playing against the same guy. I forgot what his name was, but I played him in 3 consecutive days. By the end of it, we had I had a record of 5-4-1 against this guy, and all he did was hammer emotes, and and I was just so pissed off. And they're just mute him. No,
no, the mute doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore. I can't get it muted.
At the time, I was no, I want to know that he's a dick. I want to know.
Yeah, because it makes it better than when you beat him. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, how are you gonna know that someone's a dick or not if you don't listen to them be a dick? It's just
right.
Yeah,
Schrodinger's dick right there. That's oh man. Anyways, gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. And Markthius, let us know, what are your coordinates? How do we find you? What do you do, my friend?
You can find me on the Twitch machine at Markthius. Or you can find me on the Twitter machine, also at Markthius.
That's very.
Where I do the tweets.
Hey, where you do the tweets. And the leader of the Legion, again, Markthius, I believe he streams Monday to Friday at 11.
Yes.
a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
That's right. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. That's 5 p.m. Central European Time for any of you European viewers.
Excellent. And Mr. Truedawn, where and when can we find you, my friend?
At Truedawn FM, or Twitch TV/Truedawn FM, is where I stream every weekday from 9 a.m. Eastern until whenever. And I'm also on Twitter, although I do it much worse than these two gentlemen. You guys have like GIFs and stuff, just like actually know what's going on. But if you want to like see my mediocre takes on various things, you can always follow me there, or just to know what's up with the stream. So.
I'm a avid watcher of both of you on stream. Not like I'm not in your bushes or anything. I don't have that kind of power.
Hey, whatever, man. Whatever gets you going. I don't.
Yeah, but that's not up to you. That's up to the police. Like,
yeah.
So thank you so much, guys. Everybody, check them out. Fantastic. You guys rocked it. So that has been episode 2 of the Coin Flip, and we will see you on the other side of the coin. Have a good one. Thank you very much.